Welcome everyone to the simulation frequency. On today's episode, it's going to be more like a freestyle podcast on my end. I'm not going to be playing any music. I'm just going to be talking straight, unscripted. I did kind of write some things down, but I want to try to cover everything in a very down to earth way. I don't want it to sound like overly esoteric. I want to bring this down to what we experience on a day-to-day basis, and then on top of that, what it looks like from a neuroscience perspective, but dig really deep for what this means, because most people will talk about it and scratch the surface, but I have been deep diving on these different topics. You can look through different videos of mine where I quote the research that I am using. I'm not just saying these things and acting as if I just know them out of thin air. I study them. I listen to podcasts. I listen to neuroscientists. I talk back and forth with ChatGPT as well. I do a lot of different things to hash out these ideas. And I want to go into just the neuroscience and just the everythingness of how to reality shift. And if you want to call it manifestation, I feel like that's like an outdated term now. I use it occasionally, but even when people say it around me, it feels like a cringy. And I don't know why, but for me, it's really just seeing reality as you want to see it. And the thing with my individual experience is that from a very early age, I had a psychedelic experience when I was 14. I was given a tab of acid and I didn't even know what I was doing. I was with some friends. I had no idea what the substance even was. And I went through all the typical emotions that you would think that you would go through, but being as though I was 14 years old, I went through a wild ride and I got to see an entirely new, different, absurd, psychedelic side of reality that most of us don't get to experience. And unless you've touched that side of the simulation, sometimes I think it's a little bit harder to digest this information or to accept it as reality. And I've even spoken to people that have had these experiences and do feel really changed by them, but still aren't making the connection between the fact that you're seeing other layers of reality that your brain is tuning into. So you are seeing different frequencies, and we're going to dive into what that actually means, because a lot of folks talk about frequencies, but nobody's getting down to what it means from a really quantum structure. And maybe there is someplace in like some other groups, but I haven't heard anything quite like this. And I will cite some of the things that I'm referencing. I have one specific podcast that I listened to that made me want to really dive really deeply into this, because they were covering Alzheimer's and dementia. And I believe if you conduct the same activities to keep away things like Alzheimer's, like using the strobing light therapy, like all the things I'm going to talk about upcoming, it will help you shift realities that much quicker. It will help you see the different frequencies, if you will, of the different shifts in your simulation that you want to experience. And just a note on everything, I am somebody who does believe that this is all from mind. It is not matter or materialistic in nature. It is a hologram that is being projected out so you can experience this feeling, if you will, through the avatar, but it is an actual game that we came to play. And I do think we forget on purpose. We are here for self-mastery, self-discovery. Now, I know other people might think that we are on some sort of prison planet and that there's aliens. Hey, listen, if you have those imaginations in your mind, it is going to then be true for you. I like to kind of think of it as God, if you will, has already imagined everything there is to be imagined. And you are just basically tuning into that specific piece of imagination that God has already imagined. And that's when you hear the whole idea of energy is neither created nor destroyed. Everything is already in existence, and you just need to tune into that. You need to use your imagination and just like a whole bunch of other things that we're going to talk about that strengthen all of these things. Because it's really easy to just blanket state some sort of like a Neville thing, like feeling is the secret, to make it really easy and just to say something like you are God. Yeah, I could say that to you, but there's more to this. It is a game, and the more consciousness you have and awareness you have over all of this, the more you will start to understand how to refine your game and play it better and better. I'm not saying that you need to do any of the things I talk about in this podcast. I'm just telling you that I have found through experience and through observation of just simulation at large and through deep research that if you want to fine tune the avatar, if you want to be able to reality shift quickly at its maximum speed, learn information and digest it and follow your beliefs and go with the things you want to execute in your life. These are some of the things that I've noticed make this expansion happen quicker. But that's what this is all also doing. It's always in a state of expansion and contraction, but it's always getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Like think about the S&P 500. It could crash a little bit, but it's always on an upward trajectory. It's always going to expand. Everything is always in a momentum of expansion. Is there contraction? Yes. So when somebody just tells you you don't need any of these things, I get that. And, you can manifest at light speed and, you don't need any of this magical bullshit. Like, I totally get that. But also observe the person that's telling you this. Do they look like they're in A1 health? Does their skin look fabulous? Do they look like they have like a maximum nutrition and that they're living like a billionaire lifestyle? Because if that was the case, they'd be able to manifest no problem and it would be, exactly what they say. But I don't always find that to be the case. A lot of people that are claiming that it's real easy like that tend to seem like it's going to be like this get rich quick scheme, and it's very spiritual bypassy, if you will. Like there's 100% truth to it. You could go and get a lottery ticket and be whatever, vibing on the right vibe and hit for millions. That happens to people, but can you be consistent? Is it consistent? Can you hit the lottery and then know what to do with the money, or are you going to squander it? Like, are you in a consciousness? Are you in poverty consciousness? Because I bet you like 25 years ago or 20 years ago, I might have potentially squandered it. I might have not put it in the right places. I might have not have spent it on the correct things or put them in the right areas. And the more I understand and learn, the more you start to know how to grow money and understand it. So it's like one of those things where while you can have these instantaneous manifestations happen to you, do you understand what that means long term? Anybody can manifest something instantaneously. We're technically doing that all the time. You are reality shifting at all moments, and we'll get into that deeper in a little bit, but you are not ever in a state of not shifting like realities. Something new is always happening. That's why there was always this, the power of now. But always remember that because we are the observers, you're kind of always seeing reality in a little bit of a lag. And I have whole videos dedicated to that to go into the science of that. The thing that I really want to start getting into is the importance of the health of your brain and your neurons to be able to send these signals out to the rest of your body in a coherent fashion on a long-term resilient fashion. If there's one thing I know, it's resiliency. It's creating that long-term plan for your brain health where you are making sure that you're doing all the things to ensure that myelin sheath and that synapse space is working exactly how you want it to, because that is the point where I believe it is your reality reality shifting, right in that synapse space. That's where Roger Penrose and Hameroff have basically coined that area where you would be in between the communication of your neurons. That would be the like God space, if you will, the space where you can collapse potentiality, the same way from like a quantum scale, where when they see that whole experiment, you can collapse a wave into a particle or what have you. So this is that on a even smaller scale in your brain. And I do believe that has something to do with everything, with all the signals that you are sending out to the body and to all of your cells and the chemicals in your said body. And I'm saying this also because I have done other videos on biology, like Michael Levin has proven these things are possible. Michael Levin has proven these connections and these communications occur, especially when things like an axolotl builds a new arm. Your cells do speak to one another, and it is through the understanding of how these all work. I think if you know this, you will take better care of your brain health. And even myself, I'm trying to get better and better. I've been taking different supplements to protect my myelin sheath. So let's go through what each piece of this does. So for example, your dendrites, that would be your input for your frequency. It receives energy and sensory data, and it's strengthened by focus, attention, and limiting noise. And then you have your soma, which is the processing core. It integrates beliefs and thoughts. Visualization reprograms this central code. That's why sleeping and meditation and those things combined, like the hypnagogic state, is so important in my opinion. And then you have the synapse space, which that is the bridge between realities. That's the quantum gap where potential collapses into form, strengthened by stillness and coherence. That's why that meditation is so important, because it allows you to have such focus on what you want to see in your reality that those neural pathways strengthen and grow. That's why people like to use things like affirmations. You have your axon, which is the transmission line. It carries action potential. It represents consistent aligned action in the simulation. And then finally, like I was talking about earlier, your myelin sheath. This is your reality shift accelerator. That's why I was saying it's so important to make sure we're keeping ourselves in a state of brain health so we can strengthen this. And this happens through repetition, emotion, novelty, hydration, omega-3s, and deep sleep build thicker myelin. Faster signals equals faster manifestation or faster reality shifting. So it's really important to take into account all the things that go into your brain health, your body health, your gut health, all that health, because they all play a role in the health of the avatar. I'm going to say the healthier your avatar, the better decisions you tend to make. I'm not saying that people can't make good decisions if they're not in good health. I'm just saying it optimizes your capacity. The firing of the synapse space will happen quicker. The travel of the communication of what you want to see, because remember, this is a holographic projection in a shared simulation. Don't get me wrong, but let's go back to the beginning where I talked about the fact that you are not able to always see all pieces of reality. For example, when I did take that hallucinogen, it allows you to access other pieces of the code. It allows you to manipulate matter in real time. I was able to make things melt. I was able to make things float. I was able to immediately spin things up in my reality, and that gives you a whole nother perspective on what you can see is possible. So we're not able to see everything, and you have to basically strengthen your neurons to be able to see things of that nature. That's why I think people have those other abilities, like maybe being able to remote view or speak to other people remotely, like read thoughts or something, or be able to potentially talk to other people on the other side. But I do technically believe it is all coming from you or I. It's all like from the Godhead, if you will. We are all connected. There's no disconnection. We're just fractalized out from the Godhead. So we're all just mirrors and representations of one another in just different formats. Strengthen these things. Like I was saying in the slide earlier, it's different things like hydration. Making sure you have all of your electrolytes is extremely important because they are these conductors that make your cells fire. If you have poor hydration in your body, your brain does not fire as quickly. I'm not saying that you aren't as good or something like this, but I'm telling you, if you want to reality shift or reality surf or whatever you want to call it, Vadim Zeland would call, you want to reality transurf, I believe your brain and your body and your gut should be in optimal health. And even myself, I'm trying to make my gut better through different ways because I have wrecked it over the years. I've actually quit drinking coffee recently for the past month or so. I'll have it here and there, but now I drink tea in the morning, and in the tea I put collagen and I put MCM in it, and I put a touch of honey, and it is a tea that is apple cider vinegar berry. And that's what I drink instead of coffee now. If I want a coffee, I could potentially have a little one in the afternoon later, but I do not start my day with that anymore. And I've also been trying to take more iodine, and I've been trying to also intake more vitamin C and making sure that I'm standing in the sun every day and participating in exercise. Exercise is another thing that grows the brain, long walks, and then really intense exercise like a couple of times a week. And there was a study that proved this. I'll put it in the thing below. Intense exercise twice a week supposedly made people in their 50s have hearts of people in their 25s with rigorous intensity over like 3 months if they just went and did different bouts of like level 5 exercises for a small amount of time, a couple of times a week. So it takes that, and then combined with all these other things like making sure you're getting the deep sleep that you need, and then also using that hypnagogic state to create novelty. Listen to different meditations, listen to different things to get you into like trippy states before bed. That weird novelty stuff grows your neurons and helps you to see more of the things that you want to see. Like if you have specific questions that you want to ask, maybe some specific person in time. If you wanted to speak to Einstein, ask him a question before bed and he'll give you an answer type of thing. You will be opening up your frequency tuner to the other realities that exist. And again, because this is all coming from mind and everything is already in existence, you're just going into that specific vibration, and technically everything is vibrating down to its smallest molecular structure. That's the whole thing with string theory. But if you keep blowing out, I've said this before, it's almost as if we are just light, we are just holograms, because you can keep zooming in further and further and further, and then there's a point where we just cannot zoom in any further. There's too much empty space and not enough magnification right now. So there's like theories about it, but I believe it's because also the simulation doesn't really in its totality want to be completely understood, because it is such a game and construct to be played as such. but I personally love exploring these things, and this is how you reality shift. Your dream, this is also just one big long dream. It is one continuous dream. You're dreaming right now, but it is the waking dream. So when you are asleep, it is a simulation for the next waking dream. And then this dream is a simulation for the next life. So I have this theory now that I've been listening to enough people say certain things, that it's when you're about to die, just imagine what you want to do next in your next lifetime, and you will be moved on to that lifetime. Because at this point, it's too much of this cyclical pattern of the energy traveling through the simulation and the universe. To shift, you want to think and feel and act in accordance with the reality that you want. And that's up to you, whether that's positive or negative. If you have negative emotions about things, people still can manifest or reality shift with negative emotions. That will not stop you. But I will say that make sure that you know what you want when you are manifesting with these emotions. Don't think about what you don't want to see, because you could make that happen for yourself, especially when you become so focused on understanding that you have this ability or power over reality. Recently, I've been hearing stories of people reality shifting, and when it happens for them, they call themselves like magicians, because they're so shocked when it happens. And I know the feeling, because I've had it happen to me so many times already. But it's like, now you have to imagine bigger and better things. And for me, it's like thinking about what the next bigger and better thing is, and knowing what that is for myself. And I think that's what a lot of people probably struggle with, but that's the fun of life. And I think it's all a pattern, like something like the Fibonacci sequence. So everything that's going to happen in your life will eventually happen within that sequence. I have been finding that most reality shifts, especially if they're larger in nature, I'm not talking about like you getting a car or potentially like moving to a new house or something like that. That could happen pretty quickly. But if you want something like growing business, or like a growing relationship, or some large sum of money, it usually takes, it seems, about like 2 to 3 years. Sometimes it happens as early as like 9 months for people, but it seems like there's even this sequence of time, quote unquote, because time doesn't really exist. It is a construct, again, of mind. And what I mean by that is just that this is just an existence. Of course, we label it 365 days. We've turned that into a year. But that's just something that we've made up at some point in time based on ancient calendars. Obviously, this is not a hard and fast rule. People obtain money, relationships, travel, moving to new places, different lifestyles, different achievements, different goals. If they want to go to college, if they want to become some sort of doctor or lawyer, whatever it is that you want to achieve in this simulation, just make sure it's aligned to you, and it will come in the timing that it really inevitably should. And I think a lot of us are worried about timing, or we think about timing often, but everything will happen in that pattern or cycle if it has not happened very suddenly or quickly for you. Everybody expects sudden and quickly. Everybody wants sudden and quickly, and you should be expectant of it. That's one thing that I could say about everything in all of the things that I'm saying. If you have a mindset that you are expecting to receive all the time, you will receive. It's really that simple sometimes, but oftentimes we fight that because we are so into wanting to think negatively or have negative thoughts about things, because as I've discussed, it's a default mode of the mind to want to be negative or go into a fear state. And we have to remember that. And when we want time to happen immediately, What state are you in? Are you wanting that thing to happen now, or should it maybe happen a little bit later? Do you need to prepare a little bit more? Is it something that if you got immediately, would it ruin something? Would you squander something? It's all about your mindset and how you're able to handle or take in or receive that specific amount of energy, because this is all really just an energy exchange back and forth. What are you prepared for? What are you ready for? What are you energetically ready to receive? And then what can you energetically hold on to? Because it's extremely easy to receive, it really is, but can you then maintain and hold on to and have resilience in that? This isn't about a one-stop shop manifestation thing again for me. It's about ongoing time frames of holding the specific thoughts that you are always in alignment and moving in accordance with your next best reality. If you trace everything back, you will link everything back to some ancient esoteric thing. And I mean everything. There's even books that I've been checking out that have esoteric meaning in everything. You can look up any symbol. It's just like at this point, anything of anything has some sort of ancient esoteric knowledge that be connected to it. Just any type of secret construct that people are not aware of that linking back to ancient knowledge that we are one with the Godhead, things like this nature. And if you start digging and going into that rabbit hole, like for me, it's the whole checkerboard, and you find checkerboards on the floors of Freemasons. And for me, when you rub your eyes and you see the checkerboards, it's the cross between the reality that you experience here in your waking, and then like plugging it back up into what would be the liminal space outside of the simulation, if you will, where you can, connect with the different frequencies at that third eye level. You activate your pineal, whatever you want to call it. There's so many different names for it across the intranets at this point, but it's realizing and connecting all of those dots and seeing those patterns and realizing that this is all just one large game that we're playing, and everything that you're experiencing is just a mirror of something and can be interpreted any which way that you want it to be interpreted. And that's the interest of living in this specific simulation, and that's why you would want to reincarnate here over and over and over again. And there's some individuals or entities or whatever you want to call it, some avatars that may not want to be reincarnated into here. I do feel this is an infinite playground that will be forevermore recycling in and out of, in a constant state of expansion, and we will constantly be evolving. And just a note on consciousness during this podcast, there are levels to consciousness, and the more you research consciousness, you see that there's all these different levels or spirals or just accounts that people have come up with to measure consciousness. And it seems at the top of it is always like unity consciousness, where you see others as yourself and you can see all perspectives and understand all perspectives and side with all perspectives, and never allow, in my opinion, the pendulum to swing too far outside of neutrality, where you're overly taking sides with somebody. You recognize that everything is just a fractal piece of you and you must care for it as such. But that is a very hard consciousness to stay in, and a lot of people like to believe that they are in that consciousness. But the moment that you start to get like angry at something and to start to have like an inner dialogue that becomes like grumpy or puts you in a bad state, that will bring you right back down the spiral of consciousness. So it's very difficult to stay in that consciousness. And I myself cannot admit that I'm in some like level of extreme Buddha status, because I still have a tendency to get angry at stuff. And I even have to learn, even in my anger, that it's no reason for it in the long run, because it absolutely means nothing, because it's just a data input. And once you start recognizing that and seeing things like your emotions as just a GPS set point, and you can sit and accept them and let them wash through you and understand that you are this consciousness having an experience in the avatar, and to let that feeling wash over you, because it is a part of the emotional journey that we go through as beings down here. And that's hard to digest for a lot of people, because they think that it's supposed to be feeling good all the time, but that's not what this experience, I don't think, is supposed to be. It's supposed to be contrast to a certain degree. You find your, what I've talked about before, the Goldilocks zone, you start to flow through life. Things don't hurt as bad. Things are exciting every day. You look at this as such a different thing. You look at it as a game. You start leveling up. You start seeing the clarity. You start seeing the patterns. You start picking up on the things that you want to align yourself with. And then the bigger and better thoughts you get, in my opinion, when you start going up the scale of consciousness, is being grateful all the time, is thanking God that you are here, is helping out your fellow consciousnesses, your fellow avatars, because many of them aren't on a certain level where they're thinking about things like this, because they're in survival mode. And just a note on that, most of us are trying to get out of survival mode, and that's an inherited data marker. And you can get rid of this. You can get rid of this quickly, but for a lot of this, it's subconscious. And we talk about the subconscious. I haven't gotten into this up until this point, but the subconscious is really running the show behind everything. And if you don't wake up to this, it will continue to run your show. And the subconscious runs a lot of things that we are very grateful that it runs. It runs our heart, it runs our blood flow, it runs all the different chemicals moving through your body, the electricity, etc., etc. It helps you run routines. It helps you drive automatically. We all know, if you're a driver, what that feels like when you zone out and you can't remember how you got there. That was your subconscious running the show, your autopilot. It was the coin subconscious back many, many moons ago. That is just something that, in my opinion, is the autopilot. In my stimulation talk would be your, like, your rendering system, your iOS, what you would want to upgrade, because you want it to automatically run for you in the ways that you want your reality to shift into. So your subconscious, if you have it programmed with like a poverty consciousness, or a consciousness that like you don't deserve, or you shouldn't receive, or things are evil, there's so many different ways that we're all programmed. Or you're just not even using your imagination because it was taught out of you during school, because school doesn't always encourage you to use your imagination. And a lot of times, many of us were sent to school to go to college and then go get a job. And I fell right into that bucket. And I knew early on that I didn't want to. And I tried to like fight the machine early on. But I was still in that subconscious fear-based system where I knew, I loved, even at the time, the movie The Matrix. Like, I knew this was some sort of matrix or simulation. But even when you're younger, you can't hash it out because you don't have the experience. And listen, Now the kids are figuring it out very young. And I hope that if you're younger and you stumble upon this, you recognize that you have this innate ability within you to reality shift and to affect change around you and to hallucinate your way into whatever reality. And you can see so many people doing this. There's so many top celebrities that you see in the news just getting millions and millions and millions of dollars from followers, blindly doing whatever they say. And that is such a fascinating concept to me. And that's how I know we're in a simulation. And I don't understand how sometimes people don't see this. The mind control, the brainwash, where there's these individuals that become so obsessed with the celebrity that they will literally buy everything that they put out, whether it's garbage or not. They will spend any amount of money on tickets. They will spend enormous amounts of time and focus and energy, thing that you probably shouldn't be putting into another avatar. You should be putting into yourself. They waste it, in my opinion, on other things, and then they might look back and regret this time, money, effort, just like the frenzy that they've put into this other individual, when you really, in my opinion, should be dumping it into yourself. Or when you start getting into these other higher consciousnesses, into these larger things that can do a better goal for the evolution of mankind, or the avatar, the simulation, whatever you want to call it, donating to your favorite charity. Like, instead of obsessing over a celebrity for 20 hours a week, maybe taking 10 of those hours and donating it to a good cause in your area, like an animal shelter, or going and helping feeding some homeless people or something like this, instead of dumping it into, and that's just an example. Like, I'm not saying that I don't always personally go out and do things like this. I do volunteer events from time to time, but I'm more of one of those people that donates money. Like, I donate monthly to a child in the Dominican Republic holds a special place in my heart, and I hope to donate more and more, or sponsor more and more children as time goes on. But these are just small ways that you can change your time and focus, but in my opinion, should be focusing it inward on self-mastery. So instead of focusing on gossip, because I used to do stuff like this, I'm talking out of experience, that if I could go back and change some of the things, I probably, maybe at this point wouldn't, because the amount of knowledge that I procured from doing these things and understanding the flip side of the pendulums is just to tell the youth that don't focus so much on things outside of yourself. Focus more on the self-mastery of your self. You become the celebrity. You go out and do the thing that you want to do, and not put so much focus on like other people, gossip, alcohol, and drugs. Like, I am guilty of that myself. Like, I used to be a very heavy like binge drinker, and I've gotten away from that, and there are so many benefits to not drinking. I don't drink often at all anymore, and there are so many benefits to taking that away, and just taking away a lot of other access things that we don't need. And I'm trying my best with that too. I still have very humanly pleasures, as they would be, and it's trying to transcend some of them, but doing it in such a way that there's balance. I am never going to probably stop eating like brownies or something. Like, it's not removing everything in its entirety. It's seeing that there's balance to be had, that there's different ways to have the pattern of health, and incorporating all of these nuanced things into our life, and then understanding that a lot of it has to do with relaxing and feeling comfortable in these different states. Like what I was talking about earlier, you have poverty mindset, lack mindset, scarcity mindset, victim mindset. There's all these mindsets that are disempowering, that if you're able to rewire your neurons to think in an empowering way, we say positive and negative. I want to say empowering and disempowering. Monitoring your internal dialogue, so where you are having empowering thoughts all the time, and empowering thoughts to where no matter what, even you can feel disempowered, and accept it and know that it's okay to feel that way and sit in it for a little bit and sulk, but then just like get right out of it, because that's just an ebb and a flow. I'll make this comparison again, just like the stock market, because everything has seasons, everything has a frequency and a flow. And if you can't identify this, you might have a hard time moving through life. People, I think, that do the best are people that can ask the right questions and identify the patterns. Because the brain is a pattern identification machine. It wants to see what's coming next. It wants to make the prediction, and it wants to make correct predictions, because technically your life depends on it, right? And I mean that in such a way where your reality shifts with the capability and the decision-making process. And that's why it's really important to know what you're doing and think about things at a higher level. I also want to slip in here that the brain is also wired to be fearful at first. We need to shake that off. We need to identify that and learn to calm it down. And this means something as simple as when you're in fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, you need to identify which one you're in and then act with quickness and make good, solid decisions. And that's what all this is also aiming to. Because, for example, you have a feeling when maybe you're about to get into an accident, or something shocks you, or you see something that can disorient you. And there is the mind, body, brain, stomach, gut, all that stuff connection where your brain and gut immediately make these connections. You have a vagus nerve, that's what can trigger a nauseous feeling sometimes, depending on which situation you may land yourself in. And if you have a really good control of your reactions and your breathing techniques and your mind-body connection, you can actually start to breathe yourself out of that panicked feeling when you don't need it anymore. Because oftentimes I'll have that because something crazy is about to happen, and then it moves away from me, or it doesn't happen, and then I can calm down and not let that wreck the rest of my day and send me into like this spiral. I've learned to identify it, breathe it right out, and leave it alone, and not talk about it, not get freaked out about it, like move about my business and continue on thinking about the things that I wanted to continue to think about, and not let it spiral me into I knew this and I knew that, into this thing, and then like let it wreck my day. And that's with anything, with how somebody speaks to me, with some event that could have happened, that those are events that will spiral you right out of the good feelingness that you want to usually walk around with. And I think that when you have these emotions and feelings and tendencies to recycle things like gratefulness, like love, like trying to help out other people where you can, trying to have ultimate mastery, because if you master yourself, you will have a master of the external. As the, old saying goes, as above, so below, as within, so without. It's that whole thing. If you can master yourself, you start taking mastery over your entire body. Like, I think there's this guy that's trying not to die. I think his name's Brian. I think that I have that right. But he's trying to gain self-mastery. And it's like, can you gain such self-mastery that you are able to speak to your cells to tell them not to age, to be in a constant relationship with your body? And it's like that mind, muscle, body relationship, to where you're so ingrained in how your body feels, how you react to things, how you think about things, your patterns, your ability to recognize patterns and then break them, subconsciously break them, not allow other people to mind control you, not allow other people to manipulate you, see different arguments that people stand up against you, and understand where there's different characters in the simulation that come into play, like psychopaths, like sociopaths, like narcissists, like people that have different disorders, people that have ADHD, like seeing all of these different things, recognizing the truth in things, seeing past many of the illusions, because most of social media is an illusion, because the entire simulation is an illusion. The only thing that isn't an illusion is when you go within. To be free from illusion would be sitting alone with yourself in the silence and listening to your truest self through that awakened awareness, and understanding the clean frequencies that you want to emit out into this vibratory universe, this vibratory existence, this vibratory mind that is all of us. And it's thinking those clean, pure thoughts that would be what's in alignment with your truest reality that you want to experience here, the reason you came here. And I think oftentimes when we have those very quote unquote what is low vibrational thoughts is because maybe the avatar isn't tuned well. Maybe you've not drank enough water that day and you are feeling like crap. You have to start taking those things into consideration. We can't just think that it's all mind and that we just have to think our way there, and that, F this crap, you manifest in 1 second and this is how it goes. There's levels to this stuff. That is, I'm not trying to be rude, that is a low level reality shifting mentality. If you need to think about these things at a much deeper level. And I'm not saying that you have to know these things to live a fabulous lifestyle. Listen, there's people out here that this comes to them easily and frequently. Like, they don't have to really get into all this. Like, it's like ingrained into their DNA. And if you're one of those people, you don't have to listen to this podcast. Please move about your business, because I see people out here on that wealth frequency where they are just living life because they're getting their electrolytes, because they're eating fabulous food 24/7. They have like chefs or whatever. They're drinking fabulous water sources all the time. They have personal trainers that are working them out. So they're getting that extremely high intensity type of thing going on, to where they can have a great heart. And your heart is an extreme part of this process too. Let's not leave that out. Your heart health is huge, because it is the connection between the mind, the gut. It's all like connecting. That's what the chakras are all about. When you align all your quote unquote chakras, you can start speaking to your cells. That's why all that Joe Dispenza stuff works. That's why they talk about healing, because it's tuning into that frequency. Recently, I heard a doctor doing tumor disintegration through ultrasound vibes or waves or whatever. That goes to prove that different sound frequencies destroy different levels of matter. It's all sound frequencies. It's all electricity in nature. It's all these things that we are unable to perceive with our 5 senses. That's why these folks tell you to always make sure that you are upgrading your third eye, because there's people out here that can see frequencies, can see auras. You can be trained to do all of this. Your avatar is not out of touch with any of these other things that you see. You can learn how to remote view. You can learn how to do all of these things that you see that seem magical in nature. They're a trainable activity. You train your subconscious. You can train your subconscious through subliminals at night, through that hypnagogic state when I was talking about earlier. That is a point where your conscious mind, and your conscious mind would be the thinking mind, where you need to shut down that part that doesn't allow you to imagine. You have to turn on, I think it's the default network. I always get like the one wrong, but it's basically the network where you turn the dial up on your imagination. And that is what has been turned down on us. And imagination is what creates reality if everything comes from mind, right? So you need to hallucinate your new reality in front of you, and then you will see it in the simulation, whatever that reality is. I'm not saying that all realities are immediately going to happen for you because, again, I've not always experienced that. We need to think in terms of probabilities. What is the probability of you having this thing? One of the really common things I see people in comments saying is, well, what if you want to manifest this celebrity? This proves that, this stuff doesn't work. Well, listen, there's a probability that you could have that celebrity. That celebrity could divorce whoever they're with. You could stumble into them in the street. You could DM them and they could accept it. You could potentially know somebody that knows somebody and then you could meet them. There's all these probabilities where that could be a potentiality. And I've heard stories of this happening. But how dedicated are you to having that happen? And then what is the probability of said thing as well? Are you wasting your time on something that isn't for you? Are you trying to align to reality where you think you want this celebrity, but actually it's this guy that lives like 3 towns down that looks identical to that celebrity and he's exactly who you wanted? Because that celebrity may be too big for you and your understanding of this reality. They may make so much money and be on these trips all the time and be in front of the cameras and have all these paparazzi and have this insane lifestyle, and you get into that lifestyle and you can't handle it. You cannot take that level of celebritydom, and you think that you can, but you cannot. And that's why the universe does not show us everything that is in existence, because we cannot handle that. Your mind would be blown. I personally think you start to receive those things in the way that you're supposed to, that your mind can conceive and handle. And that's why they say meditation is so important, and in my opinion it is, because you need to continue to grow your neural networks. You need to continue to strengthen your pathways. You want those synapses to fire faster and faster and faster. And you can do that through repetition. That's why affirmations work for certain people. Do they work for everybody? Not really, because the thing is you need to be feeling it in your bones. And through affirmations, some people have that sink into their psyche, into their subconscious. It does it for them. But some people resist and fight. And in the back of their head, they're like, this shit is not working. And when you have that whole like back thing going on, it's hard to retrain your subconscious, because your subconscious is making you do things that you don't even probably recognize that you're doing. I have other episodes about this, like for example, sleepwalking, because I've said before, in your night dream, these are training grounds for the simulation for the next day. And this simulation that you're living right now could be a training ground for the next life that you're supposed to live, okay? And a note on lucid dreaming, that is a very specific way to reality shift. Again, in my opinion, another technique or transmission. In your lucid dreams, you have the ability to do things that you normally wouldn't do in the waking dream. However, I believe, like I mentioned, is a training ground. So you can go into your lucid dreams with the intention that you're going to be playing out the next scene that you are intending to relive in the actual waking dream. So say you want to hit the lottery, say you want to get a new job, say you want to find a lover, say you want to create an invention, say you want to just have any of your questions answered, you can do this in your lucid dreams. It takes a little bit of practice, but I've noticed that once you start to master this, you can be in the lucid dream, wake up in the lucid dream, realize you're actually having a lucid dream, and then specifically have intentions in that dream. It feels very insane when you first are in the lucid dream and you realize that you have the lucidity in that specific state. And it feels almost like you're going 100 miles an hour in the dream, but continuing to try to maintain focus that you are not in your waking life. Is a very trippy experience when you're in it, trying to maintain the control, because once you attempt to start controlling the lucid dream too hard, it starts to almost like dissipate away, like you've seen in movies. It starts to defragment, it starts to unrender for you, and it feels extremely chaotic. But that's the mind control that you start to have. So you have it in not only the waking dream, you have it in the sleeping lucid dream. And for me, there's reality checks like everybody says, and I will in the lucid dream think to myself, okay, I'm now in the lucid dream, because you can see things around you are strange. There's a body feelingness over you that feels very peculiar, and I can just identify that I'm in the dream, and then attempting to shift focus in the dream. It's all a very learned thing that through exercise and practice you can start to do. But I believe these are training grounds for you to then play out the specific scenario you want to experience in this simulation. So take this seriously. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you try to level up in the game the highest that you could? If you don't want to, that's fine too. You can be a lump on the couch if you want. That's up to you. But for me, that is not exciting and that is not fun. And I don't think that gets you anywhere but being a lump. Things in motion stay in motion, right? So you need to repetitiously train your subconscious through different ways. And you can use just affirmations if you want, but that's not something that has always worked for me. I use that in times where there's crunch. They have worked for me there, but for longer term, it's saturating my visualizations. It's seeing myself in those scenes, taking on some of those esoteric-y kind of teachings from Neville, from Florence Scovel Shinn, from your Joseph Murphys, from all of those people from back in the day. There's so much knowledge there, and getting into that dreamy, sleepy state and just really thinking about what you want and thinking about that next thing that you want to experience, but experiencing it now, and not even necessarily having to get excited, but just acting how you would act if you were in that moment. And if it is excited, freaking act excited, because there's been moments where people are like, act natural. I don't always act natural. So why would I do that? I don't have to act natural if I don't want to. If I want to be excited and grateful for something, I can be freaking excited and grateful for it, because that vibration resonates. And if we want to get technical, it's like the higher you vibrate, the higher you go. So, that's why people really get into the Esther Hicks stuff, because she's always talking about flying high on your disc. And I used to love Esther Hicks. I really Abraham, the channeler. And a note on the whole 17 seconds thing that a lot of people discuss here, and it is originated, I'm pretty sure, from Esther Abraham Hicks. And it basically is stating that a thought held for 17 seconds of a pure undistracted focus begins to activate a vibration. So the way I see this, if there's an infinite amount of parallel realities that we are running on right now, that we live in a multiverse that would all technically be coming into imagination. So if everything has already been imagined, you are just connecting to that vibratory state of imagination that has already been executed. So it would be starting the vibration of the 17 seconds to activate that initial vibration that you're sending out to the sim. And then she also says to hold it for 68 seconds, and the momentum ends up being strong enough to begin attracting a physical manifestation, the equivalent of launching a signal into the quantum field. So this is where like the whole law of attraction thing comes into play. All of your thoughts start magnetically attracting to what you're thinking. But the way I interpret it, as in the way from the simulation theory perspective, is that you would be connecting to that vibrational reality that already exists because it's already been created, right? So there's a reality where that has already occurred. Remember, I talked about living in a lag state. So once you imagine something, you start to connect with it. And if you can hold that imaginal state for 17 seconds and then keep holding it, and then the longer you hold it, like 68, 78, 88, 98, you just keep holding on to that vibrational frequency, you start to align to that vibrational set point, or that imaginal set point, if you will. So think of it as like some sort of electrical current. If you have a current running at a certain thing and you want to turn on a device, it's not going to turn on unless you reach the current that that device requires. It's the same type of idea. It's holding the state until you can connect with that imaginal scene, and then it will play out for you. That's why some people can have instant, quote unquote, what you would call manifestations, where a rich aunt dies and you inherit $10 million, or the love of your life just calls you out of the blue, or you stumble on the street and you were just thinking about them yesterday. Just all this like strange phenomena that can seem to happen is often something that these people were thinking about, or this seed that was planted and they reached that set point. The thing here to remember is the holding onness of the set point. It's understanding that there is a set point to be had, understanding that it's maintaining the vibrational frequencies of whatever this is in the future, so you can hold on to these things that you're looking to achieve. Because unless you want to drop those. But if you want to maintain a state of being in good relationships, that is a frequency. You need to be on the state of understanding and moving in accordance with good relationships. You have to always be affirming to yourself that you maintain great relationships. And it's the same thing with anything else. I talk a lot about money because it's one of the easier things to bring up in the simulation, because everybody is always kind of having money pass through their hands at some point. And it's one of those things where, are you on the maintenance of wealth? Will you hit the lottery? Will you be given the large sum of money? Will you be given the high paying job? Will you be given the luxury lifestyle? And can you maintain it, or will you squander it? Will you not have the intentions internally? Will you not have the persona built up to maintain this type of frequency of whatever it is that you're wanting to shift into? Because it's very easy to acquire something, and then it's extremely easy to squander it. You could get a brand new beautiful car, but what type of person are you? Are you going to wreck the car? Are you going to shit it up in 2 seconds? Are you going to like dump it on the side of the road? And the reason I've seen things like this is I've watched documentaries where there's other countries that have come into large sum of money, like small islands that hit it big because maybe they had some sort of resource and money was poured into the island. People became extremely rich. And then because they probably didn't have the mindset of what to do and what next level of consciousness to activate with this wealth, a lot of them squandered it. Many cars were thrown on the side of the road. There was like Bentleys and Corvettes, like gorgeous cars that you would normally have seen paying over $100,000, wrecked on the side of the road because people just took it, crashed them, and didn't know what to do, or they couldn't maintain whatever insurance was on them, or they couldn't maintain the costs of fixing it if something went wrong, and they just would abandon it all on the side of the road. Like, how many times do we see abandoned houses from just rich celebrities that could not take this fame and the fortune? They did heavy amounts of maybe potentially drugs, or ended up gambling it all away because they didn't understand what they were doing. They were just frivolously walking through the sim. It's like playing the game on a level 2 or something, and you hit the cheat codes and you figured it out, but you don't have the higher consciousness or the awareness or background on what to do to maintain these different lifestyles, which are frequencies, because a frequency is a ritual or a habit or something that you are continuously doing. It doesn't matter. Affirmations, going running every morning, going to the gym, eating healthy, maintaining a certain lifestyle, maintaining certain relationships, maintaining your well-being. These are all things of a frequency. But it's like, once you see it all for what it is, it's like these are just motivational speeches for yourself, for you to recognize yourself. Even this right here is a motivational speech for you to recognize your power within yourself. And then once you start listening to these things and saturating your mind and then getting your body right, physicality right, as the things that I was discussing, you're going to level up. And you're going to start seeing the glitches in the simulation. You're going to start picking up exactly where to weave in and out of reality where you need to. And you will start riding this like a wave, as Vizim Zealand would call it. And it's such a perfect example. That's why I bring them up a lot, because I love the beach. It's why I moved here. It was one of the moves that I made in my reality. I used to live in Philadelphia, and now I live 15 minutes from one of the most gorgeous beaches that I've ever personally been on. And I've been on a lot of beaches around the world. And I saw this house in my dreams before I ever had it existing here. I would visualize, I would just think about this house 24/7. And looking back on it, I'm like, yo, I should have did bigger and better. And I hear that from so many different people. But I love my house. I'm so grateful for it. But I'm trying to tell you to dream big. Like, do your best on what you want, because if you follow these steps, if you saturate your mind, if you start seeing the weirdness of reality, if you start following these different protocols and stick with one and recognize that through these different repetitions of training your subconscious and recognizing your patterns that you have, your quote unquote negative patterns, or the patterns that you have that are not leading you towards your most aligned life, you can repattern those patterns, and you can have your subconscious mind autopilot your new reality for you. You wake up and it's just autopiloting you into this new reality because your identity changes. It's like a coordinated orchestra of, my cat is ripping up my paperwork. It's a coordinated orchestra of your mind, body, soul, and the existence of this reality and your subconscious and conscious mind. And it's like you consciously know that you want these things, but you're not always achieving them. And this is why. And once you start deep diving into this, you'll see, scratching the level of people saying like, don't listen to this stuff. It's complicated and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's fine. And you don't have to. And again, if you're in that rich people consciousness to where you're just doing whatever all the time, and you can just snap your fingers and make millions, because there's people that can do this, folks. There's people that can do this. And if that's you, you don't need to listen to this podcast. I need to be listening to your podcasts. But on the flip side of that, I've gotten to the level that I've gotten to, and I'm not like a multimillionaire yet, but I'm getting close, and I'm figuring it out, and I'm realizing where I need to put my money, and I'm realizing things that I need to invest in, and I'm realizing all the different ways that rich people hide their damn money. And I'm thinking about taxes, and I'm thinking about businesses, and I'm thinking about all these higher level things if you want to get to this next level of wealth or income. But there's also thinking about relationships. Do you want next level relationships? Is that what you're seeking out? You've obtained the wealth part. You just have to mirror what you've done to obtain the wealth with the relationships. And people often cannot do this. And that's why they struggle in other areas of their life, because they're not recognizing the pattern. But it's the same cyclical pattern across all of the cosmos. You switch this, you see that the relationship is just another type of data set that you can take in and understand the cycles and realize what you want out of a relationship and what you don't. And then you emulate onto that person. And oftentimes they will start acting and behaving the way you want them to, especially if you see that person in the light that you want to see them in, and you think of them as doing the things that you would like to experience in this life. And I'm not talking about like that mind control, he's obsessed with me. It's in a very relaxed way where you confidently know that this relationship is right for you, and you graciously give back and forth and are a reciprocal pendulum to one another, an equal and opposite. Not that one is abusing one or the other. Are there swings in power? Of course, that's everywhere. But that there's always a neutral thing to come back to. And it's realizing that in every aspect of our life. It's our mental health, realizing that if you don't have good mental health and that's what you're trying to seek out, it's recognizing that your brain can be rewired, that you can repattern yourself, that through these acts of repetition and these different novel ideas that you can come up with and saturating yourself with knowledge, you will change. But it's up to you. It's up to the user to code the experience. Because if you don't code your experience, everyone around you will code it for you. And you will be following a subconscious pattern that you aren't even aware of, living a life that you don't even want to live. Because you've listened to people growing up. You've listened to what society told you was correct, quote unquote. You've done what your mom and dad told you should do. You did what your friends told you should do. Oftentimes you have to sit with yourself, and it's called that like loneliness phase, but it doesn't have to be. You're not lonely per se. You're sitting with yourself, me, myself, and I, and sitting with all the voices that could potentially come through and picking out the clearest one that is alignment with the reality that you're trying to experience, but recognizing that you want to maximize this experience through making sure you're taking care of all of the different facets of this reality and what this life has to offer. Because if we're running on empty on some of our different buckets, because we have, again, multiple buckets that the body needs to be filled, the body, the mind, the soul. And if you're not somebody that believes in God, usually it's community. You need some sort of community that you can filleth your cup with, because again, that's the expansion part of who we are. All of these different things, the buckets need to be evenly filled. And once we see that pattern and recognize that sometimes the buckets go down to empty, but then we know that we're at empty and we refill them. Because when we're at empty, maybe that's why we're having negative thoughts. Maybe that's why we're not feeling good. Maybe that's why we're thinking evil crap. Maybe that's why we're at a really low level of consciousness. And we see the pattern and we refilleth the cups all across the board. And we have that cleaner, higher mind thinking where it's unity, consciousness, wholeness, love, gratitude, helping everybody else see these things and awaken to their self and awaken to the person that they are within, and that they can affect the change and that they're not stuck, that this is not a prison planet, in my opinion, that you can control your own things. And some people would say maybe like the gut biome, if you have like bad biomes and like bad germs, or you need probiotics, the good flora is not outweighing the bad flora, people can say that that's like alien structures in your body. And if you zoom in on those structures, they do look like aliens. So that's an interesting take on things. So it's up to you to perceive how you see these things. Who are the aliens? Are they the gut biome being out of order, out of whack with these weird other strange alien looking biomes? Or is it the aliens in the sky? Or is it the aliens in the dirt? Because I see lots of weird creatures in the dirt. And I also see lots of weird creatures in the ocean. So there's aliens all around us, really. Just depends on what aliens you're talking about and what aliens your imagination can come up with, to be quite honest with you. So I know this podcast has already been an hour, but I hope that you saw the value in understanding the vastness of this reality and how there's so much that you don't know. And if you act like you know everything, you limit yourself. You put a stopgap between the expansion of experience. Because if you think you know everything, what's left to then experience? If you think you know how to manifest better than anybody, if you think that you know how to do this, that, or the third better than anybody. I see people out here bashing people for like their ideas and like calling them crazy. And it's like, what if it's something that you don't see? And I think it's funny because oftentimes these are cyclical. If there was a podcast back in the day for some of the scientists that existed at the time, there'd be a podcast that would like bust on Tesla, like an interesting AI thought concept to take something like Tesla and what a modern day podcast would call him crazy for before he invented certain things. And then after it happened. And then it's like, oh, well, he was crazy before that. But then suddenly when his invention worked, he's actually not crazy anymore. When you're so quick to judge people for their inventions or for their knowledge, all of this is somebody pulling it out of their butt. Somebody pulled a computer out of the thin air. It didn't exist before. And that feels like it could have been witchcraft at some point. If you came and walked up with an iPad or a computer back in the day, you would be killed for witchcraft. You would be burned at the stake for sorcery. Okay, so like that's an interesting point to understand, that where could we be in 30, 40, 50, 60, 100, 200, 300? What could we have that now people are calling people crazy for, and they're just out here ranting and raving to try to make money, and they're trying to seem self-righteous, and they're just tearing people's ideas down, not putting light on how these ideas could benefit. So I like to take ideas and see how they can benefit and not look at them and see how they're so negative. You can do that. Obviously, you need both sides of the pendulum. When you place so much heaviness on it not being true or it being trash or just being like psychopath ideas, you're not seeing it for what it could be. So it's really having this open-mindedness. And I feel like the more we judge people, the more we're casting these quote unquote spells over people, these verbal attacks, if you will, calling people like dumb and stuff like that, and their ideas are moronic, like all this stuff. You are casting things over somebody else's ideas or imagination. And I don't think that that's beneficial, because that you're only doing that to yourself, in my opinion, like because of the way that I think. So you're only shedding an unwanted light on yourself that you can do in such a better way. There's ways to objectively look at stuff and not tear people down for it. I try to do that to the best of my ability on my channel. But again, I think it's just having this consciousness and awareness that not everybody is on the same level. The more we level up, the more we can help other people level up, or just put the information out there so other people can consume it at some point in time. And like they say, the information will find the person when they're ready for it. I hope this information reaches the right people when they're ready for it. and they can see this other alternate side of reality that connects all these different things together that we talk about. You can connect all the dots and then make it work in your own reality. And I do this through lots of different ways that are fun and novel. Like I told you, I do a lot of flashing light therapy. I think that's fantastic. I think that gets me into the hypnagogic state, and it makes me see the fractals. I see what feels like that outer layer of reality, and I can imagine different things that I want to experience, and it's so much fun and it feels so good. And at this point, I'm like, I would love to just meditate for like 3 hours a day. Like, I get why monks want to like sit and visualize and meditate, because you can have some really gorgeous experiences. In my humble opinion, that's when we're disconnected from the sim. You get that? And that's why we come here, to disconnect from that and to have 3D experience and not be in the state of like meditation and bliss all the time. So like we disconnect from that, but we can reconnect to that when we follow our deep meditative paths and get to that level of ultimate bliss and like Kundalini, what they call Kundalini awakening, and just opening your chakras and all that stuff in your third eye and just connecting up past into the mind. And you can just imagine whatever you want, see fractals, see infinity, experience all kinds of fun, funky beings, talk to extraterrestrials, talk to people on the other side, talk to people who have lived, try to remote connect to people who are living now, visualize your future. Just, it's all that fun stuff that I think that we're supposed to be doing here in the sim. And we don't see it because it's like tuned out of us. They don't want you to see it, I think, because there's a level of power that needs to be maintained. And if everybody was doing this, it would be like chaotic. So I hope everybody really enjoyed this episode. There's so many different ways to awaken your own novelty in your avatar and to reality shift, and to use all of these things that I talked about and to see reality for what it is, to have the visualizations about your neurons synapsing faster, that you can learn quicker, that you can act faster, that your decisions are flawless, that reality always moves in your favor, that you are out of any consciousness that is controlling your life in a fashion that you don't want it to be, that you are somebody that is able to see the patterns around you and connect with your alignment in the simulation, so you move how you want to move every single day. So you wake up knowing that your excitement is what you are following every single day, that you are moving to the reality that you want to experience, why you came here for. Because I do believe when you end it all, if you're thinking about what you want to experience next, you'll land in that next reality. So this is just a dream within a dream, this training ground for the next simulation. And you are meant to just continuously have an experience of expansion and love and gratitude and just waking up to this. And I think eventually everybody does, but it's a journey. And until you walk through that actual journey and experience it all for yourself, you're not going to know. And until the next time, guys, I know you are all going to continue to manifest magic and resonate on your highest frequency. Bye, guys.